It was a rainy Thursday afternoon in downtown Chicago when Sarah sat in her office, the sound of raindrops drumming softly against the window. The clock ticked slowly, each second stretching into eternity. Sarah was busy organizing her desk, a habit that calmed her nerves. She loved the routine of it, the feel of order among the chaos that surrounded her. But today felt different. Today her mind was swirling with thoughts of the meeting she would attend later. She had been preparing for weeks. Sarah had always dreamt of this moment, presenting her ideas to the board of directors at a prestigious tech company. They were launching a new project, and she was finally going to pitch her vision. This was her chance to shine. As her colleagues chatted around her, the air hung heavy with anxiety and excitement. Reports and spreadsheets littered the room, creating an atmosphere charged with both hope and fear. Sarah adjusted her glasses, took a deep breath, and focused on her notepad, her heart racing with anticipation. But then Mark, her boss, walked in. He was known for his no-nonsense attitude and sharp tongue. "Yes, I did," she replied confidently, glancing up from her notes, "just putting the finishing touches on it." "Good." He paused, his eyes boring into hers, searching for something beneath her surface. "Sure, Mark," she answered, her stomach nodding slightly. Questions often felt more like inspections. He asked, leaning a bit closer. For a moment, a silence filled the air. Sarah felt the weight of his question hanging between them, heavy and uncomfortable. But instead of answering, Sarah simply smiled and turned back to her notes, the truth swirling in her mind. What if they didn't like her idea? What if all her hard work was for nothing? But she brushed aside the thought. She had to focus on getting the job done. Mark's forehead crinkled in confusion. He prompted again, but she shook her head slightly, waving him off. She knew he was trying to protect her with his question, but in that moment she couldn't afford any distractions. The clock struck 3 and the meeting was about to begin. Sarah took a deep breath, pushing her uncertainties out of mind. She gathered her materials, her heart thumping in her chest. This was it. This was her moment. As she entered the conference room, her voice wavered only slightly as she introduced herself. The faces of the 7 board members stared back at her, varied expressions of curiosity, skepticism, and a bit of impatience. They each held a power in their hands, and Sarah felt small, almost as if she were a child standing in front of giants. She laid out her ideas passionately, voice steady, gesturing with her hands to emphasize key points. She spoke about innovation, teamwork, and the new heights they could reach together. The energy in the room shifted as she captured their attention, weaving her story into their expectations. But about halfway through her presentation, she noticed one of the board members, a stern-looking woman with sharp features, whispering to the man next to her. Doubt gnawed at her stomach. Were they talking about her? What was going wrong? As she finished up her pitch, she could feel the tension sizzling in the air like static electricity. The board members exchanged glances. A few scribbled down notes, others just stared at her, their expressions impassive. Then came the dreaded question. The same woman from before sat forward, her brow furrowed. "This all sounds great, Sarah," she said, "but it seems too idealistic." Sarah paused, her heart pounding at the sudden weight of that question. Her mind raced with responses, but in that crucial moment, all her thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind. She stammered, wishing she could just teleport out of the room. "Take your time," the chairman urged, his voice calm yet expectant, sending another wave of pressure through her. But Sarah couldn't do it. She felt a pressure building in her chest. She glanced at her notes, knowing she had answers, but all she could muster was, "I." She felt frustration rising, but she wouldn't let the board see that. Her response hung in the room like a dark cloud. The lady nodded, but Sarah could tell it wasn't the answer they wanted. The room felt small and stifling, and Sarah wanted to escape to take a breath of fresh air. With a silence that seemed to stretch on forever, the chairman finally spoke. "We appreciate the presentation, Sarah." A knot formed in her throat as she gathered her materials. She was certain she'd blown it. Outside, the rain intensified, matching the storm brewing inside her heart. She felt footsteps follow her as she left the room. Mark was right behind her. "Sarah," he said, his voice softer now. "What happened in there? You know the stakes." "I know, Mark," she replied, exasperated. I froze. They threw me off with that risky question. I didn't want to admit I had my doubts." "It's okay to not have all the answers," he said. "You can't plan for every scenario." Sarah nodded, taking in his words, though feeling defeated. Maybe he was right. Moments could slip away so easily if you didn't face them head-on. Just as she reached the elevator, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Glancing down, she saw an unfamiliar number. Nervously, she answered. The voice on the other end was deep and authoritative. "Yes, it is," she replied cautiously, her heart racing again. "Hi, this is Thomas Riley, the chairman of the board you just presented to," he said. His tone was warm yet serious. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "Hello," she managed to say, though her brain raced with what he could possibly want. Her heart sunk momentarily, waiting for the criticism she expected. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and confusion. "Really?" "Yes," he replied. "I sense potential in your ideas, but I want to hear more about them directly from you," she said, suddenly feeling exhilarated. "Great," he replied. The line went dead, leaving Sarah standing in the lobby, her heart soaring. Mark approached, his eyebrows raised. "I don't believe it," she stuttered, struggling to find the words. "Wow," he replied, his expression shifting from concern to admiration. Her entire body felt electric. The weight of her earlier fears started to lift. Maybe she hadn't failed after all. Maybe this was a chance to clarify everything she left unsaid in that conference room. As she stepped outside, the rain had finally let up. The streets glistened, the world vibrant and renewed. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill her lungs. She had a second chance, a rare opportunity to revisit her dreams. But she knew this time around she wouldn't ignore the hard questions. She hadn't just learned to face her doubts, she had learned to embrace them. With a steady heart and a clearer mind, she walked down the busy streets of Chicago. The future awaited her. The phone rang twice before she picked it up, her heart racing as she glanced at the caller ID. It was from an unknown number, but something in her gut told her this was no ordinary call. Sarah said, her voice steady but laced with a hint of anxiety. The voice on the other end was deep, commanding. "Yes, this is," she replied, a knot tightening in her stomach. "Hi, this is Thomas Riley, chairman of the board at Future Technologies," he said. The name echoed in her mind, sending her thoughts spiraling back to the tense meeting just hours before. Just that morning she had stood in front of the board members, trembling as she delivered her pitch. She'd poured her heart and soul into her ideas, but when the time came for questions, doubt whispered in the shadows. Mark, her boss, had asked her a question that hung in the air like a heavy fog. It pierced her preparation like a sharp knife. Instead of addressing it, she smiled and turned back to her notes, ignoring the weight of unspoken fears. The answer eluded her, buried beneath layers of anxiety. She stammered, snapping back to the present. "I have to say I sense some potential in what you proposed," Thomas continued, his tone unexpectedly warm. Her heart beat faster. "But I need to clarify some things." Sarah echoed, feeling exhilaration rush through her. "Of course, great." With that, the call ended, leaving her breathless. She hung up her phone, staring blankly at the wall across her small cubicle. What just happened? She felt a rush of excitement mixed with disbelief. Just hours before, she had left the meeting feeling crushed, certain that she'd blown her chance. Now a door had opened and she could barely contain her joy. But it wasn't just happiness she felt. Behind it lurked something darker. A shadow whispered doubt in the corners of her mind. What if she didn't have what it took? What if the chairman was just being polite? For every bit of excitement, a wave of fear surged, crashing around her. She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts as she headed home. The evening passed in a blur. She barely touched her dinner, her mind swarming with thoughts of the meeting. She replayed every moment, the raised eyebrows, the hushed whispers. What were they saying about her? Were they laughing behind closed doors? She grabbed her notepad and began writing again, determined to turn her thoughts into something concrete. Hours turned into a sleepless night. When the alarm rang the next morning, Sarah jolted awake, her heart pounding. She felt unprepared, as if a stranger had wandered into her dreams and stirred up every insecurity she had. But she couldn't back down now. She had to show up and fight for her vision. The sun glinted off the skyscrapers as she made her way to the office. Chicago was alive, the bustling city echoing with restless energy, but her focus narrowed to the task ahead. She arrived at Future Technologies, stepping into the cool, modern lobby where sleek lines and glass walls reflected the ambition of the company. "Good morning," the receptionist greeted her with a smile. "You're here to see Mr. Yes, I am," Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The elevator ride to the chairman's office felt eternal, each floor adding to the tension in her chest. When the door slid open, she stepped into a spacious office filled with natural light. Thomas sat behind a large oak desk, his expression serious yet inviting. "Sarah," he said with a nod, gesturing to a chair. "Thank you for having me," she replied, taking a seat. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, calming her anxious heart just enough to breathe. "I wanted to reach out because I believe there is more to your ideas than what was expressed yesterday," he said, his gaze piercing through the atmosphere of uncertainty. In that moment, something inside Sarah shifted. The confidence she had lost returned, simmering beneath the surface. "Absolutely. I believe that by focusing on user experience paired with advanced technology, we can create something groundbreaking," she said, her voice steady as she explained her ideas. As she spoke, she lost herself in her passion, the earlier questions and moments of doubt fading into the background. She spoke about the need to innovate, to take risks, and to push boundaries. The more she talked, the more animated she became, leaning forward in her chair as she brought her ideas to life. "That's what I'm looking for," Thomas said, nodding along. His eyes sparkled with a mix of skepticism and intrigue. Sarah hesitated, remembering Mark's question from the day before. "I understand that risk management is crucial." "Interesting," he said, scribbling notes down. "You see the bigger picture, but tell me what drives you." For a moment, Sarah felt raw, her emotions laid bare. "Because I believe technology should enhance what it means to be human. We have this incredible opportunity to create something that connects people, makes lives better." As the words spilled from her lips, she realized she was speaking not just about the project, but about herself. In that room, she was no longer just an employee, she was a visionary. The conversation flowed seamlessly, ideas bouncing back and forth like a powerful dialogue between two passionate minds. She brought up her thoughts on user accessibility and the importance of inclusivity in technology, emphasizing how their company could lead the charge in changing the industry. "Wow," Thomas said, chuckling softly. Sarah replied, tilting her head. "I expected a rebuttal of fears, an explanation of why we couldn't rather than why we could," he said, leaning back in his chair with a smile. "I believe we need to challenge each other," she said, feeling bold. "Success doesn't come from playing it safe." "I like your spirit," he said, deepening the conversation. As they spoke, Sarah noticed a flicker of interest in his eyes, something she had aimed to ignite all along. They delved deep into strategy, dissecting the potential pitfalls and the triumphs that could emerge from bravery. Hours passed in what felt like minutes, and just when Sarah thought the conversation couldn't get any better, Thomas leaned forward, a serious look on his face. "Listen, Sarah," he said, lowering his voice. "I want to offer you something. What if you lead the initial team on development?" Her heart leaped into her throat. She repeated, stunned. "Yes," he said, unwavering. "You've shown vision, drive, and passion." Her mind raced, excitement flooding through her, but the shadow of doubt flickered at the edges. Thomas smiled, the warmth of his confidence washing over her like sunlight breaking through clouds. "If you don't take risks, how can you grow?" In that moment, Sarah felt a surge of empowerment. She thought about all the times she had hesitated, all the moments of silence when she let fear whisper in her ear. She realized this was her chance. "Yes," she said, her voice strong. Thomas reached across the desk, extending his hand. "Welcome aboard then, Sarah." As she shook his hand, a sense of destiny wrapped around her like a warm blanket. All the late nights and anxious moments had led to this, a moment of clarity and purpose. When she left his office, the world felt different. The light was brighter, the air was filled with possibility. She had taken control, she had grasped the reins of her future. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Sarah dove headfirst into her new role, collaborating with talented team members and navigating the complexities of launching a project. Each day brought new challenges, and with each challenge she felt her confidence grow. In the evenings, she reflected on how much had changed since that fateful call. The meeting that had once filled her with dread transformed into a door that led straight to her dreams, but as the project progressed, moments of doubt still crept in. Those doubts had slunk back into her mind at times like fog, trying to cloud her determination. But instead of shutting her down, Sarah used those fears as fuel. She would tell herself, pushing through. The support of her team helped her weather those storms. She found strength in vulnerability and began to embrace the tough conversations instead of shying away from them. The day of the big reveal approached, and the stakes felt higher than ever. They would present their work to the board, a culmination of hard work, creativity, and heart. Standing at the front of the room, facing the board members once again, Sarah felt a whirlwind of nerves and excitement battling inside her. She glanced at Thomas, who gave her an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, she launched into the presentation, this time confident and clear. As she spoke, she saw the board members paying attention. No longer were their eyes glazed over, they were leaning forward, engaged. She spoke of user impact, of innovation, and of connection, driving home the essence of what they had created together. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. It was a moment she had dreamt of, but never believed she could achieve. What started as a question she had ignored turned into a powerful transformation. Feeling a swell of pride, Sarah took a moment to let it sink in. She hadn't just presented an idea, she had shared a piece of herself. The feedback flowed, each member voicing their approval, their excitement palpable. As the meeting concluded, Thomas approached her, a glimmer of pride reflecting in his eyes. "You did it, Sarah." Tears of joy filled her eyes as she looked around the room at her team, the group of people who had stood up alongside her. One question that had haunted her in the beginning had transformed into a journey of growth and discovery. Ignoring that question had led to one of the most powerful moments of her life, a reminder that sometimes the only way to find answers is to face the lurking fears head-on. In that vibrant world of technology, she found her voice and her place. She had learned to embrace challenges as opportunities and to trust in her own strength. The road ahead was bright, filled with endless possibilities, and she was ready to walk it, each step a testament to her newfound courage. The clock struck 5 and the office buzzed with the frenetic energy of last-minute deadlines. Sarah felt her heart race as she reviewed her presentation notes one last time. She had worked tirelessly for weeks, pouring her blood, sweat, and tears into this project. Today was crucial, the day she would present her ideas to the company's board, including the chairman himself. As she set her notes down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this could be her moment or her complete downfall. She dreamed of this opportunity for years, and now it was finally within reach. Mark, her boss, called, his voice slicing through her thoughts. She forced a smile and nodded, but inside, her nerves danced wildly like butterflies caught in a storm. Just hours before, she had experienced a very different kind of storm, one that left her shaken. Mark had asked her a question earlier that day. It was simple, innocuous, but it struck her like a bolt of lightning. In that moment, a tidal wave of anxiety surged through her. She had worked so hard, investing every ounce of creativity and effort into this project, and yet Mark's question lingered ominously in her mind. Instead of answering him, she had smiled and turned back to her notes, hoping to drown out the noise of uncertainty. Ignoring his question felt like a mistake, but she didn't have time to reflect on it. She had to go in there and own her pitch. The conference room was intimidating, with its large oak table and rows of polished leather chairs, each one occupied by a board member, including the elusive Thomas Riley, the company chairman. As Sarah walked in, all eyes were on her. She could feel their gazes piercing through her, scrutinizing every inch of her. Taking a deep breath, she began her presentation, pouring her heart into every word. She spoke about the project, a revolutionary app designed to enhance user experience through artificial intelligence. The ideas flowed, and for a moment she felt unstoppable. But then the atmosphere shifted. One of the board members, a stern-faced woman with piercing blue eyes, leaned forward, her brow furrowing. "This sounds promising, Sarah, but what if it doesn't resonate with users?" Instantly, the earlier weight of Mark's question resurfaced, twisting in her gut. Instead of addressing it, Sarah felt a rush of panic. We have comprehensive data backing our concept," she said, her voice faltering for just a moment. "We'll tweak based on user feedback." She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, the doubt creeping back in. The woman raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Tweaks aren't enough when you're proposing something this significant, Sarah." But Sarah brushed the feeling aside. She was here to prove herself, not to get caught up in fear. "I appreciate your feedback," she replied, trying to sound more convincing than she felt. After a series of questions, some supportive and others challenging, the meeting drew to a close. No applause, no celebration, just dismissive nods and murmurs as she left the room. Her heart sank as she made her way back to her desk. She felt hollow, as if her soul had been stripped bare. But as the clock turned towards 8, she received a call that would change everything. It was an unknown number. Her instincts told her to ignore it, but something compelled her to answer. She said, her voice shaky. The voice on the other end was deep and authoritative. "Yes, it is," she said, sitting up straighter in her chair. "Hi, this is Thomas Riley, the chairman of the board at Futura Technologies," he said. Her heart raced at the sound of his name. Her mind whirled. Had he called to criticize her? "I'm okay," she stammered, unsure of what to expect. "I wanted to say that you had a lot of good concepts," he continued, his tone surprisingly warm. "But we need to dig deeper into the risks associated with them." Sarah felt a mixture of shock and excitement. "Yes, great." As the call ended, she sat back in her chair, breathless. Her heart raced not only from the surprise, but also from a renewed sense of hope. Maybe she hadn't completely failed after all. The chairman of the board saw potential in her work. That evening, she barely could sleep. Thoughts raced through her mind, her heart pounding in anticipation of the meeting. She reflected on how she'd ignored Mark's question. Instead of allowing fear to trip her up, she could use it as a rocket booster for her ideas. The next day, she arrived at Futura Technologies early, practically buzzing with energy. The sun poured through the windows, casting light on sleek, modern office spaces. She felt an electric thrill as she walked toward the elevator, every step bringing her closer to the pivotal conversation. When she stepped into Thomas's office, the space felt larger than life. The walls were adorned with vibrant artwork, each piece a testament to innovation and creativity. He stood by the window, looking out over the city, and turned as she entered. "Good morning, Sarah," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "Thanks for having me," she said, taking a seat. Her palms were clammy, but her resolve was hardening. "I reviewed your proposals again," Thomas said, his expression serious but intrigued. "I see a lot of potential here, but we need to talk risk." The earlier question from Mark echoed in her ears, but this time it sharpened her focus rather than freeze her. "I believe that with the right feedback loops in place, we can adjust our strategy almost in real time," she began, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. Thomas nodded thoughtfully, and she could tell he was weighing her words carefully. She hesitated, her pulse quickening again. "Then we adapt," she said, conviction resonating in her voice. "We learn and pivot." The conversation flowed seamlessly, the tension dissipating with each back-and-forth exchange. They discussed the intricacies of her project, diving deep into strategies that sharpened her vision. She began to feel a bond, a collaboration taking shape in the air between them. Finally, Thomas leaned back, a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. "You handle pressure well, Sarah." A rush of warmth spread through her, washing away the lingering doubts. "Thank you," she said, beaming. "Listen," he said, leaning forward again. "I'd like to offer you more than just a chance to adjust your project. I want you to lead the team into this next phase." The floor seemed to shift beneath her. Lead the team, the opportunity was both thrilling and terrifying, a chance to step beyond her fears. "Really, I wouldn't have asked if I didn't believe it," he said, his confidence radiating. She felt exhilarated. All the moments of doubt, all the late-night planning, all the times Mark's question echoed in her mind, they all led to this turning point. "I accept," she said, her voice strong, no hesitation. Thomas extended his hand, and she took it, sealing a pact that would forever change the course of her career. As she left his office, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter. The world outside felt bright, electric even, as though she had stepped into a new reality. The city buzzed with life, but Sarah felt like she was dancing on a cloud. Over the next few weeks, she poured herself into her work. The fear that had once gripped her transformed into a powerful fuel driving her forward. She rallied her team, fostering an environment of open dialogue. Every day became an exercise in embracing uncertainty, learning to address those tough questions head-on. Whenever doubt crept in, she recalled that pivotal moment with Thomas, the moment that had lit her fire. She remembered how she had ignored a question at first, but had ultimately learned to confront it head-on. Ignoring doubt would only lead to more fear. This journey was about embracing challenges, as every obstacle became an opportunity for growth. As the project progressed, feedback from early user testing came in faster than she expected. Some reactions were overwhelming, while others were constructive critiques. Each piece of feedback allowed her to refine and rework the app, and her confidence grew with every improvement. The big reveal was approaching fast, and Sarah felt a combination of excitement and nerves. The board meeting would be the culmination of months of work, an entire team coming together to showcase their collective achievements. Standing in front of the board again, a familiar feeling washed over her, only this time it was different. She faced them not as a terrified employee, but as a leader who had earned her place. As she took the podium, her heart raced, but it was the thrill of possibility that fueled her, not fear. The presentation was met with a positive buzz, and the response from the board members was immediate. They were engaged, asking thoughtful questions, and for the first time they weren't just scrutinizing, they were collaborating. With each answer, she noticed Thomas nodding in approval. Finally, as she wrapped up, the room erupted in applause. The acknowledgement felt like a wave of empowerment washing over her. "Bravo, Sarah, fantastic work," Thomas said, standing up from his seat, his approval evident. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, a mix of relief and joy. Every moment of fear, every question she had ever ignored had led her here, a moment of triumph. She had turned a potentially crushing experience into the stepping stone for something greater. In that beautifully chaotic world of business, she had found her voice, her confidence, and her place. She learned that ignoring questions wouldn't keep them at bay. Embracing them would unleash her true potential. Johanna once doubted her abilities, but now she stood tall. The path ahead may still hold challenges, but she was ready to face them with the unique resilience that had been cultivated through self-discovery. From that day on, every time uncertainty whispered in her ear, she would remember the powerful call that changed everything and how she had taken control of her fate. She learned to turn fear into fuel and doubt into determination, ready to conquer whatever lay ahead. The phone rang at 8:00 p.m., cutting through the silence of Sarah's living room. She almost didn't pick up, the screen flashing an unknown number while her pulse raced with anxiety. It was a strange hour for a call, especially coming from a number she didn't recognize. With a mixture of dread and curiosity, she answered. The deep voice on the other end sent a shiver down her spine. "Yes, this is," she replied, her heart racing. His name felt like a sudden jolt, and she could nearly hear the gears in her mind grinding to a halt. The board meeting she'd attended earlier that day flashed through her memory, the anxiety, the excitement, and then the crushing disappointment. "Mister," she managed to say, her voice shaking, "I wanted to talk about your presentation." Her heart sank for an instant, memories of the meeting flooding back. She'd stood at that podium, hands trembling, delivering her pitch for an innovative new app. But when the questions came, doubt had gripped her. There was one question that had haunted her ever since Mark, her boss, had posed it just before she walked into that room. Instead of confronting that fear, she had smiled and brushed it aside, pretending it didn't exist. And now a wave of panic washed over her. Had she truly blown it? "Your ideas have potential," Thomas continued, snapping her back to the present. "But I sensed some hesitation during your presentation," she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "When the board questioned your plans for risk management, you seemed evasive." The fear that had gripped her seconds earlier transformed into a mix of shame and determination. She thought about how she had avoided answering the hardest questions, how she had ignored Mark's ominous warning. I didn't mean to appear evasive," she said, forcing herself to stand taller, even on the other end of the line. "I believe in this project, and I thought I could turn the slides into something tangible without being bogged down by what-ifs." "That's what I want to hear," he said firmly. "I'd like to give you another chance." "Yes, absolutely," she answered, her heart racing once more, not with fear this time, but with excitement. "Great." As the call ended, she sat in stunned silence. Adrenaline coursed through her veins. The chairman of the board wanted to see her again. This was her chance to redeem herself, to take control of her narrative, and to show them what she was truly capable of. That night, Sarah barely slept. Every moment from that fateful meeting replayed in her mind. She questioned her decisions, but deep inside, she felt a flicker of determination. If she wanted to succeed, she would need to confront her fears head-on, not brush them aside. Morning came, and the city was alive with a soft hum as she made her way to the office. But nerves gnawed at her stomach. With each step, Sarah reflected on her decision to ignore that earlier question. How had she let herself become so paralyzed by fear? It was time to face it. When she arrived at Thomas's office, the walls felt like they were closing in. Each step toward the conference room was a challenge. After what felt like an eternity, she stood at the door, her heart pounding like a drum. "Come in," his voice rang out, strong and authoritative. As she entered, she took in the room. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the modern decor. Thomas sat behind a massive desk, reviewing documents, but he looked up, his gaze steady. "Thank you for seeing me," she replied, her voice stronger than it had felt moments before. "Let's get right into it," he said, diving straight in. "I want to hear your revised risk management strategy." Taking a deep breath, she launched into her revised plan. "I've come to realize that we need to approach this from a more proactive stance. We can implement user feedback loops, ensuring we adapt our design based on real-time data." He nodded, leaning forward, his expression thoughtful. Her mind cleared as she spoke, the earlier butterflies settling as she became engrossed in the ideas flowing from her. "Good, give me an example of how you would handle negative feedback," he pressed. "We can set up beta testing with select users," she explained, feeling her confidence grow with each word. Thomas watched her intently, and she noticed the faintest hint of a smile on his lips, stirring her hope. This was the moment she had been waiting for. This was her opportunity to show her worth. He paused, then leaned back slightly in his chair. Because technology isn't just about pushing boundaries, it's about improving lives. If we don't listen to our users, we risk developing something that may not connect with the very people we aim to serve, she said, sincerity shining through every word. He seemed satisfied, a spark of respect flickering in his eyes. "You're right." Their conversation flowed seamlessly, the tension easing with every exchange. For the first time since she presented her idea, Sarah felt the exhilaration of potential unfolding before her. The chairman was no longer an intimidating figure. He was a collaborator who valued her input. Finally, as they wrapped up, Thomas stood, extending a firm handshake. "You've impressed me today, Sarah. I can see you have what it takes to lead this project." The air around her felt electric, her heart racing with disbelief and joy. "Be honored," she said, her voice radiating enthusiasm. "Great," he replied, smiling. As she exited his office, a sense of accomplishment surged through her. No longer was she the employee who had frozen under pressure. She was now the lead, someone who had turned fear into fuel and doubt into determination. The next weeks unfolded with a whirlwind of energy. Empowered and fueled by her recent win, Sarah leaned into her leadership role. Each morning felt like a day filled with possibilities. She gathered her team, eager to foster an environment where everyone felt heard. Feedback was a vital part of their process, and with each meeting, Sarah felt more confident in her decisions. The project began to take shape, moving from abstract ideas to tangible designs. Every challenge they faced only heightened her resolve. However, the shadow of doubt still lurked, reminding her of the precarious balance she had to navigate. During one evening brainstorming session, a team member raised a question that sent a prickling wave of anxiety through her. "What if we're not ready for this?" Instead of brushing the concern aside, Sarah took a breath and chose to lean into the conversation. "That's a valid concern, but what if we focus on building a minimal viable product and iterate our way up?" The tension in the room dissipated as the team began to engage, discussing potential solutions rather than dwelling on fears. For every challenge that arose, Sarah felt more equipped to handle it, both as a leader and as an individual. Days turned into weeks, and before she knew it, the beta testing phase arrived. Excitement mixed with anxiety bubbled amongst the team. They had put their heart and soul into this product, and now it was time to see how it would resonate with users. When feedback began to trickle in, Sarah felt the familiar flutter of nerves, but as she read each response, she felt a wave of accomplishment. Users loved the design but had suggestions for enhancements. Instead of feeling defeated by critiques, she found joy in the feedback. This was the essence of their work, a real dialogue with users. With every suggestion implemented, the app evolved more accurately to meet user needs. Sarah felt a surge of pride, knowing they were moving closer to their goal. The presentation of the final product to the board approached quickly. The room was filled with energy as members gathered, excitement buzzing in the air. This was it, the culmination of hard work, passion, and overcoming fears. Standing in front of them, a wave of confidence washed over her. The nervous tremors that had threatened to sabotage her earlier faded into a sense of belonging. This was her moment to shine. As she walked through their journey, highlighting user feedback and showcasing their developments, she saw the board members nodding along, engaged and interested. The questions came, but this time she was ready. "Sarah," one board member said, a serious look on their face, "you've clearly identified how to manage risks effectively." "Excellent point," Sarah replied, her heart racing but voice steady. "We'll have contingency plans in place, a dedicated team to tackle any unexpected challenges head-on." The board members exchanged glances, their expressions more approving than critical, and as she wrapped up her presentation, the room erupted in applause. Relief surged through her, tears prickling her eyes. Timing was everything. Each moment of fear where she had hesitated transformed into steps forward. Turning back to Thomas, she felt gratitude for the opportunity and for the challenge he had posed at the very beginning. He stood, smiling with a deep sense of pride. "Well done, Sarah. Thank you for leading us to this moment." In that instant, Sarah understood. Leadership didn't mean having all the answers. It meant facing challenges, embracing uncertainty, and above all, encouraging collaboration. That day wasn't just a success, it became a defining moment in her life. She learned that ignoring questions doesn't shield you from them. Facing those questions head-on gives you the power to shape your fate. With newfound confidence, Sarah walked out of that boardroom, heart full and spirit soaring. She had learned to transform her fears into stepping stones and her dreams into reality. No longer would she let uncertainty rule her. The chairman had unlocked a door, one that led her into a world filled with endless possibilities. For the first time, she felt ready for whatever lay ahead. Each challenge was an opportunity, each doubt a chance to grow. The journey was just beginning, and she would face it all with strength and determination. The sound of the phone vibrating against her desk sliced through the silence of Sarah's late evening. She glanced at the screen, her heart beating faster. An unknown number and a knot tightened in her stomach. Something about that call seemed important, yet daunting. Taking a deep breath, she wiped her clammy hands on her blouse and answered. The voice on the other end was deep and authoritative, sending a shiver down her spine. "Yes, this is," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Her heart raced. The name alone was enough to put her on edge. Just a few hours earlier, she had faced the board in a crucial presentation, her big moment to shine. But instead of applause, she was met with skeptical questions that gripped her with uncertainty. "Hi, Mr. Riley," she asked, doing her best to sound calm. "I wanted to discuss your presentation from this morning," Thomas said. Her mind raced back to that meeting, the moments where she had felt deflated rather than empowered. Instead of tackling it head-on, Sarah had smiled nervously and ignored the fear that gripped her. Now her chest tightened at the thought of it. "Your ideas have potential," Thomas continued, pulling her back to the present, "but I could sense some hesitation from you." It was like a tightrope walk, and she could feel herself teetering on the edge. She desperately wanted to give him a good answer, but all she could think about was how she'd avoided the question Mark had posed. How had she let fear mute her voice when it mattered most? I thought I could present without getting bogged down by what-ifs," she stuttered. "Exactly, what I need from you is a comprehensive strategy to manage those risks." Sarah blinked. She said almost too quickly, "Great." As the call ended, her heart raced with anticipation. Could this be a turning point? The chairman wanted to meet with her a chance to redeem herself, but doubt crept in again. Was she ready for this? Could she actually deliver what he needed? That night she tossed and turned, every moment filled with flashbacks from that boardroom. The unexpected waves of anxiety threatened to drown her. Hours seemed to stretch on endlessly, but she fought to silence the chaos swirling in her mind. Morning light streamed through her window, illuminating the new day, but also the weight of her nerves. The city buzzed with life as she walked to work, her thoughts wrestling between excitement and fear. When she entered Futura Technologies, the building felt both intimidating and exhilarating. Everything about the sleek lines and glass walls screamed success, yet here she was, battling her own fears. She approached Thomas's office, standing outside and taking a moment to gather herself. With each breath, she reminded herself that this meeting could flip her entire career around. "Come in, Sarah," he called, snapping her back to reality. As she stepped into the office, the bright sunlight streamed through massive windows, illuminating the open and inviting decor. Thomas sat behind a grand desk, reviewing documents, but looked up with an encouraging smile. "Good morning," she managed, her voice steadier than before. "Let's get right into it," he said, his demeanor shifting to serious. Taking a deep breath, she felt the rush of adrenaline propel her forward. "I've realized that addressing risks is vital for any successful project." He nodded, his gaze steady. For a moment, panic flickered in her chest. This was the question she dreaded, the fear she'd tried to bury, but she refused to let it control her. "Then we learn from it and pivot," she said, her voice growing stronger. Her words hung in the air, and for the first time she saw a glimmer of appreciation in his eyes. "Interesting." "Yes," Sarah replied, growing more confident. "Innovation requires courage." As they continued to discuss strategies, Thomas seemed genuinely engaged. Each point she made felt like a step further away from that moment of doubt, a step closer to embracing her vision. She became immersed, her passion for the project shining through every word. Finally, Thomas leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smile stretching across his face. "You're impressive, Sarah. I can see you have the potential to lead this project." Her heart soared, disbelief washing over her. She asked, fighting back tears of joy. "Yes, I understand. I won't let that happen again," she promised, her eyes blazing with determination. As she left his office, the weight that had sat on her shoulders for so long felt lifted. Instead of running from her fears, she had faced them, and they had resulted in an opportunity that felt monumental. In the following weeks, Sarah threw herself into her new role, approached with enthusiasm rather than trepidation. Every morning buzzed with potential and creativity, and she fostered an environment where her team felt empowered to share their ideas openly. Instead of panicking, she took a breath and leaned into the worry. "That's a valid concern. Let's reframe it. What if we focus on gathering solid data? What if we create a minimum viable product, gather feedback, and then iterate?" The atmosphere shifted. The team rallied around the idea of testing and learning, transforming doubt into opportunity. Each meeting became a step forward, a chance to confront fears rather than run from them. Days blurred into weeks, and soon the beta testing phase was upon them. Excitement crackled in the air, but so did anticipation. They had invested their hearts into this project, and it was finally time to see how it resonated with their audience. Feedback rolled in, and Sarah felt both exhilaration and trepidation. As she read each piece of feedback, she noticed something remarkable. The critique was constructive. Users loved the design but had ideas for enhancements. Instead of feeling discouraged, she reveled in the feedback, knowing it meant they were on the right track. "Let's incorporate these changes," she encouraged her team, fueled by their passion and shared vision. With each adjustment, the app began to evolve. Sarah felt a surge of pride with each past milestone. She wasn't just a product manager, she was a leader, someone who had embraced the challenges rather than ignored them. Then came the day of the big reveal, the moment they would present their work to the board once again. Standing in front of a room filled with faces that had once scrutinized her, she felt nervous but also empowered. She was ready. As she began to present, Sarah saw how engaged everyone was, their eyes focused on her, their brows furrowed with interest. Questions flowed, but this time they felt more like a collaboration than an interrogation. One board member asked, "By creating a feedback loop, we actively listened to our users throughout the process. Each iteration was shaped by real user experience," she explained, feeling more at ease with every word. Thomas sat at the front, nodding in approval. "Great insights, Sarah." As she concluded, the applause from the board was thunderous. Relief washed over her, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. She did it. She had transformed her fears into something beautiful and impactful. Afterward, as the board members filed out, Thomas approached. "Incredible job, Sarah. You've gone from a hesitant presenter to a formidable leader." "Thank you, Mr. Riley. I appreciate your support," she said, emotions swelling in her chest. In that moment, all the hours of doubt, all the fears she had ignored led to this triumph. She realized that facing challenges head-on had not only transformed her career, but also empowered her to grow as an individual. Walking out of the conference room, she felt a new energy surrounding her. Every challenge was now a chance to learn, every fear an invitation to grow. She had broken through the barriers that had held her back, ready to tackle whatever lay ahead. Her journey had just begun, but Sarah no longer felt burdened by questions. Instead, she welcomed them, each one an opportunity to pave her path forward. With newfound confidence, she stepped into the light, ready to shape her destiny and embrace the incredible journey of leadership that awaited her. The phone rang, echoing through Sarah's small apartment like a thunderclap. She stared at the screen, her heart racing. An unknown number. She hesitated, her breath hitching in her throat. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she should just let it go to voicemail. But a strange instinct urged her to answer. She said, her voice barely above a whisper. The voice was deep and authoritative, and it sent a chill down her spine. "Yes, this is," she replied, forcing herself to sound composed. "This is Thomas Riley, chairman of Future Technologies," he said. Her heart pounded in her chest. How had she landed a call from the very person she admired most in her industry? But then her thoughts raced back to the boardroom just hours prior, the tension, the questions, the doubts that had sprung up like weeds. "I wanted to discuss your presentation from earlier today," Thomas continued, his tone serious. Suddenly her mind was flooded with memories of her pitch. She had prepared tirelessly for this moment, pouring her passion into every word. But when the board had started questioning her, she felt her confidence unravel. Instead of confronting that question, she had smiled it away, but the shadow of fear lingered. "I was hoping I did well," she stuttered, realizing how flimsy she sounded. "You have potential, Sarah, but let's be honest," I sensed hesitation. That question hit her like a gunshot. The truth was, she had ignored it because she feared what it might reveal. "I thought I could brush it off," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "That's the first step." She replied more quickly than she intended, excitement rushing through her. "Good." As the call ended, Sarah sat in silence, her heart a cacophony of emotions. She had another chance, a chance to redeem herself. But the realization also brought back the fears that had haunted her all day. Was she really ready? That night, sleep eluded her. Every time she closed her eyes, the scenes from the earlier meeting replayed in her mind, the glances exchanged by the board members, the doubt she felt pooling in her stomach. She tossed and turned, wondering if she was truly cut out for this. The question mark it posed echoed relentlessly. What if they don't like your idea? Morning arrived, and the city roared to life as she made her way to Future Technologies. The skyscrapers loomed overhead like sentinels, each one reminding her of the monumental task ahead. As she entered the building, the polished floors and modern decor felt both inspiring and intimidating. She walked past the busy office environments, the intensity palpable in the air. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they were headed except for her. She was still grappling with her doubts. Finally, she reached Thomas's office, the large wooden door standing tall before her. Each breath trembled slightly in her lungs as she knocked. "Come in," came his voice, strong and inviting. Stepping inside, she was immediately captivated by the view outside. Thomas sat behind a desk that seemed to command respect, and his gaze met hers with intensity. Sarah, welcome, let's not waste any time, he said, sitting forward. The knot in her stomach twisted tighter, but she refused to let doubt win. I've been thinking, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. We can implement a real-time user feedback system, allowing us to pivot quickly based on actual data rather than assumptions. His eyebrows raised slightly, intrigued. Then we need to have contingency plans in place. We'd analyze the data, adjust our strategy, and stay flexible. As she spoke, energy surged within her. The fear that had weighed her down transformed into fuel. She was in the zone, the fog of uncertainty lifting as clarity emerged. Good. Adaptability is crucial in this fast-evolving landscape, he replied. Sarah paused, her heart racing at the depth of the question, because technology should serve the people who use it. If we ignore our users, we risk developing something that doesn't meet their needs. Empathy has to be a core value in every step we take, she asserted, conviction resonating in her voice. Thomas leaned back, contemplating. That's a strong answer. They continued to dive deeper into strategic conversations, and each exchanged idea sharpened her focus. Sarah felt a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced before. She was part of this world, and her voice mattered. Finally, Thomas settled back in his chair, a look of approval crossing his face. All right, Sarah, I'd like you to lead this project moving forward. A flood of relief washed over her. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Yes, but remember that with great power comes great responsibility, he warned. Yes, I understand. I won't forget this moment, she promised. As she left his office, a rush of exhilaration coursed through her. This was a turning point. Facing her fears had unlocked a door she never knew existed, and now she was ready to charge through it. In the ensuing weeks, Sarah immersed herself in her new role. The energy each day brought was intoxicating. She encouraged an environment where her team felt safe voicing their ideas. Feedback was embraced, not feared. One rainy afternoon, during a brainstorming session, someone voiced a concern that sent his anxiety spiraling. Instead of freezing at the panic rising within her, Sarah met it head-on. What if we frame it differently? The atmosphere shifted. The team rallied around her, invigorated by the prospect of taking intentional steps to understand their audience. Together, they transformed anxieties into strategies. Days turned into weeks, and soon they reached the beta testing phase. The moment of truth was upon them. Sarah buzzed with anticipation, torn between excitement and nerves. This was the period of validation that would determine if their months of hard work had paid off. When feedback began to pour in, Sarah's heart raced. As she read the comments, she found herself experiencing emotions she hadn't expected, an odd mix of fear and hope. Users liked the app, but they had suggestions that would enhance the experience further. Instead of feeling defeated, she felt empowered. This feedback was a living document, a chance for refinement. Sarah exclaimed during a team meeting. Across the table, the team nodded, their enthusiasm igniting. They began brainstorming how they could integrate this feedback effectively, and with every adjustment they implemented, the app grew. The big reveal to the board approached quickly, and the stakes felt higher than ever. Nervous energy buzzed in Sarah's stomach as she prepped for the presentation. This time she would not shy away from any questions. She would meet them head-on. Standing in front of the board, she felt the weight of their gazes. As she began the presentation, passion flowed through her words. She showcased what the team had achieved, the user feedback they had incorporated, and the adjustments that resulted in tangible improvements. Every nod from the board members filled her with a sense of affirmation. Questions arose, but they were different this time. They felt more like a collaborative discussion rather than scrutiny. One board member asked, by continuously engaging with our users, gathering real input at each phase, she answered confidently. The more she spoke, the more powerful she felt, shedding her earlier insecurities. When Sarah finally wrapped up the presentation, the room erupted in applause. Relief washed over her, and she could hardly believe what had just happened. Thomas approached her afterward, a proud smile on his face. You did it, Sarah. You've come a long way from that first presentation. Tears threatened to spill as she looked at him. Every moment of fear, every question that had seemed insurmountable had led to this triumph. She felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Thank you for believing in me, she said, fighting back emotion. As she walked out of the boardroom, the city felt vibrant and alive, filled with promise. Sarah realized that the journey to this point hadn't just been about the app, it was about transforming herself. No longer would she ignore questions that felt daunting. Instead, she had learned that tackling those fears head-on could pave a path toward success. With renewed confidence, she stepped into the sunlight, ready to tackle whatever lay ahead. Each moment now held potential, and every question became an invitation to grow. In embracing her journey, Sarah found not only her voice but an unshakable belief in herself. This was just the beginning, and she was more than ready to shape her future, one courageous step at a time. The phone rang, cutting through the stillness of a quiet evening. Sarah stared at the screen, her heart pounding as it lit up with an unknown number. Should she answer? Doubt twisted in her stomach, but something instinctual urged her to pick it up. She answered, the uncertainty thick in her voice. The voice on the other end was deep and commanding. Yes, this is, she replied, feeling a rush of adrenaline. This is Thomas Riley, chairman of Futura Technologies, he said. Her heart raced even faster. The chairman himself. The weight of the call felt monumental, yet her mind was flooded with thoughts of her presentation that morning. The board meeting had left her feeling vulnerable and exposed. "Mister," she managed to say, an odd mix of excitement and anxiety in her gut. "I wanted to talk to you about your presentation today," he continued, pulling her back into the tension of the room she'd left earlier. That moment in the boardroom felt like a distant storm. She had spent weeks preparing for this pitch, a chance to showcase her idea for an innovative new app, but when it came time for questions, everything she had rehearsed slipped away. Mark, her boss, had raised an eyebrow and asked the question that still haunted her. Sarah had ignored it. Instead of confronting the fear, she brushed it aside, thinking she could charm her way through the meeting. But now, standing on the precipice of her career, she felt the gravity of that decision. "Your ideas have potential," Thomas said, cutting through her thoughts, but I sensed hesitation. His words hit like a slap, forcing her to confront her choices. "I thought I could address it later, but I see now that I need to tackle those issues head-on," she admitted. "Good, that's a start," he replied. She said, her voice a mix of relief and determination. "Great." As the call ended, Sarah's heart danced between excitement and dread. This was her chance, but could she make the most of it? Was she prepared to confront her fears? That night sleep eluded her. Questions swirled in her mind like a storm. Why had she ignored Mark's warning? Did she even have what it took to impress the chairman? She tossed and turned, the emotional weight heavy on her chest. Morning arrived, and Sarah steeled herself as she stepped outside. The sun glared down at her, a stunning contrast to the anxiety that brewed inside her. The city buzzed with vitality, but all she could focus on was her upcoming showdown with fate. When she reached the sleek entrance of Futura Technologies, her pulse quickened. The building stretched skyward, gleaming under the sun. It was an imposing structure filled with ambitious minds, and she felt small within its shadow. Walking down the brightly lit hallways, she passed bustling coworkers, their faces a blend of determination and focus. Her own doubts clawed at her as she approached the office door with her heart pounding in her ears. "Come in," Thomas called out, breaking her trance. As she entered, sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the modern decor and giving the room an air of optimism. Thomas was behind an enormous desk, looking up from a document with keen eyes. "Sarah," he said, motioning for her to sit, "let's get right into it." Her gut twisted, a whirlwind of anxiety and resolve coursing through her. The question that had haunted her now stood before her like a mountain, demanding to be climbed. "I've realized that we definitely need to anticipate risks rather than avoid discussing them," she began with a shaky voice. "I propose implementing a continuous feedback loop that allows us to adapt our strategy based on real user data." Thomas nodded thoughtfully, but the weight of his gaze made her heart race. "And what happens if the feedback is negative?" This time, instead of shying away, Sarah took a deep breath. "If we receive negative feedback, we will view it as an opportunity for improvement." "Interesting," he said, his tone becoming more engaged. "Because technology should enhance lives, not complicate them. If we don't listen to our users, we risk creating something that lacks relevance," she replied, feeling passion rise within her. As she shared her ideas, Sarah felt her confidence growing, the tension in the room easing. Every word was a step towards self-discovery, revealing the leader she could become. Thomas's expression softened. She could see respect growing in his eyes. "Now we're getting somewhere, Sarah," he said, leaning back with a hint of approval. It was as if the air had been knocked out of her lungs. "Really?" The word sounded foreign yet thrilling. "Yes, but with that comes responsibility. You must be ready to face challenges head-on, especially the tough questions," he added, his voice steady. "I will be," she promised, resolve flooding her senses. As she walked out of his office, a wave of exhilaration washed over her. The weight of fear had transformed into momentum, propelling her forward. She had faced a daunting question and emerged with a victory, a flicker of belief igniting within her. Days turned into weeks as Sarah threw herself into her new role. Each morning felt infused with purpose. She encouraged her team to voice their ideas and embrace feedback. They were no longer just colleagues, they were co-creators on a shared journey. One afternoon, during a brainstorming session, a team member spoke up, doubt evident in his voice. "What if our users don't connect with the app?" In the past, this might have sent her spiraling, but Sarah felt a newfound strength. "What if we frame it this way? We engage with users from the start. We can gather insights through focus groups and rapid prototyping. By testing hypotheses early, we can discover what works and what doesn't," she encouraged. The room buzzed with energy as they began to explore the new avenues she had opened. Instead of floundering in the fear of failure, they embraced the idea of failing fast, learning quickly. Weeks passed, and soon it was time for beta testing, the moment of truth. Anticipation crackled in the air as their hard work was about to be put to the test. Sarah felt a mix of excitement and anxiety in the pit of her stomach. When feedback started to roll in, her heart raced with every notification. Users praised the design but offered suggestions for improvements. Sarah felt empowered. Feedback wasn't a setback, it was an opportunity to grow. She exclaimed in a team meeting, and they did. Each iteration led to enhancements, and the app began to evolve into something that resonated deeply with its future users. With every change they implemented, Sarah felt pride coursing through her veins. The day of the big reveal to the board arrived. The stakes were higher than ever, and she could feel the weight of their expectations. Standing in front of everyone again, she felt nerves creeping in, but she knew she had prepared. This was her moment to shine. As she spoke, recounting their journey, an aliveness filled the room. She showcased the feedback data, highlighting how it had informed their decisions and led to tangible improvements. Confidence radiated from her as she deconstructed the evolution of their product. One board member asked, Sarah met the challenge head-on. Our ongoing user feedback sessions were crucial in guiding the development. Thomas sat at the front, nodding with approval, a warm smile spreading across his face. As she concluded, the room erupted into applause. Relief and joy washed over her like a cleansing wave. She had done it. She had transformed her fears into triumphs. After the meeting, Thomas approached her, pride shining through his gaze. You've come a long way, Sarah. Thank you, Mr. Riley, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. As she walked out of the boardroom, she felt reborn. The earlier doubts that had weighed her down were now mere echoes in her mind. With every challenge, she had grown, embraced the journey, and learned that facing questions head-on was the key to unlocking her potential. Now every moment felt alive with possibilities. She had learned that her worth wasn't determined by others' opinions, it was forged through resilience. With renewed energy, Sarah stepped into a bright future, ready to conquer whatever lay ahead. The journey had only just begun, but she was more than ready to shape her destiny, one bold step at a time. The phone rang, shattering the stillness of Sarah's apartment. She glanced at the unfamiliar number flashing on the screen, a knot tightening in her stomach. Should she answer? The last time she had felt this uneasy was just hours ago, standing in front of the board of directors at Future Technologies. Her heart raced as she picked up the phone, unsure and anxious. She said, her voice shaking. The voice on the other end was deep and commanding. Yes, this is, she replied, her heart thumping in her chest. This is Thomas Riley, chairman of Future Technologies, he said, and at that moment the world around her vanished. The weight of his name hung in the air like a thunderclap. Mister, she exclaimed, almost choking on her own words. This was the man she had admired from afar, the ones who had shaped the very industry she aspired to conquer. I wanted to discuss your presentation from earlier today, he said, and the somber tone sent chills down her spine. Memories flooded back, the cold room, the flickering lights, and the scrutinizing gazes of the board members as they peppered her with questions. Okay, Sarah managed to say, anxiety tightening her throat. I sensed some hesitation during your pitch. Specifically, I want to know why you avoided the question about risk management, he continued, his voice steady, but the weight of his words felt like a grenade ready to explode. Her heart sank. She had ignored the very question that had hung like a black cloud over her presentation, Mark's question about what if they didn't like her idea. It had terrified her, and instead of confronting it, she had turned her back. I thought I could sidestep that for now, she stuttered, feeling a wave of shame wash over her. But I see now that I need to address it. Preparation is key, he replied. Can you come into my office tomorrow at 10? Yes, she said, a rush of hope surging through her. This was a second chance, a lifeline thrown to her in a storm of doubt. Good, I'll see you then, he said, and the call ended, leaving Sarah staring blankly at her phone. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, her heart racing with possibilities. Could she really turn this around? As the night crept on, sleep eluded her. She tossed and turned, the echoes of her failed pitch playing over and over in her mind. What if she hadn't ignored Mark's question? What if she had stood her ground instead of succumbing to fear? Her heart raced with anxiety, and her own insecurities rose like formidable waves crashing against her ambitions. The morning sun broke through her window, casting a golden light on her messy desk. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of determination build within her. Today was a new day, and she had a chance to prove herself, a chance to show not only the board but also herself that she was capable. When she arrived at Future Technologies, the very air hummed with the energy of a bustling tech giant. The building loomed tall, emblematic of her aspirations. She shook off her nerves and made her way to Thomas's office, her heart pounding like a drum. Each step felt heavy, filled with both dread and excitement. Come in, Thomas called, his voice slicing through her tension. As she stepped inside, the sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the sleek, modern space. Thomas sat at a grand desk, reviewing documents as she entered. He looked up, his expression unreadable. Good morning, Sarah, he asked, his tone neutral yet commanding. Good morning, she replied, taking a seat. The serious expression on his face made her stomach twist, but she pushed those thoughts aside. Good, he said, leaning forward. Taking a deep breath, she began. I realize I need to take a proactive approach to risk management. I propose implementing a user feedback system, allowing us to adapt our plans based on real-time data rather than conjectures. Very well, he said, his tone shifting slightly, but decisions often come with their own set of challenges. The question hit her like a punch to the gut. If that happens, we'll treat it as a learning opportunity. Thomas stroked his chin, seemingly contemplating her words. Because technology should serve human needs, not the other way around. If we ignore our users, we risk developing a product that doesn't resonate with them at all, she said, feeling more confident with each word. His eyes brightened and she could see respect starting to bloom. That's a strong stance. They dove deeper into the conversation, and as each idea flowed, Sarah found her footing. The tension eased like steam escaping from a kettle, replaced by a palpable energy that filled the room. Here she was, a chosen emissary of her vision, standing toe-to-toe with the very man whose approval could launch her career into uncharted territory. After what felt like a lengthy discussion filled with insight, Thomas leaned back and smiled. "You've got the makings of a leader, Sarah." Her heart raced, disbelief flooding her senses. Laid, it seemed surreal, like standing on the edge of a dream. "Yes, but with that responsibility comes the need to embrace challenges head-on. Remember, every obstacle is a chance to grow," he said, his seriousness cutting through the moment. "Understood, I won't take this lightly," she promised, her voice steadier than before. As she left his office, adrenaline surged through her veins. This was her turning point, confronting what had once stifled her. Sarah felt lighter, as if a storm cloud hovering over her had finally cleared. In the days that followed, she poured herself into her leadership role. Each morning brought renewed energy, and she fostered a collaborative environment with her team. They held brainstorming sessions, each idea becoming a thread weaving a tapestry of innovation. Then came an unanticipated challenge. During one of those sessions, a team member voiced a significant concern. What if our users really don't connect with our app? In the past, such a comment might have sent her spiraling into doubt, but Sarah felt empowered. What if we engage our users from the get-go? We can implement rapid prototyping and gather feedback directly. The tension in the room dissipated as they began to explore the concept. They hammered out strategy after strategy, every discussion building momentum and sharpening their focus. Weeks flew by as the beta testing phase approached. Excitement and apprehension bubbled inside her, like a pot boiling on the stove ready to overflow. It was time for their hard work to be put to the test. When the first round of feedback began to trickle in, an overwhelming mix of emotions struck her. She opened her laptop, heart racing as she clicked through the responses. Users praised the intuitive design but suggested crucial adjustments. Instead of discouragement, Sarah felt invigorated. Feedback was her ally, not her enemy. She said in the next team meeting, her voice rising with conviction. Every tweak they made brought the app closer to meeting user needs, and Sarah relished in the idea that they were not just building software, they were creating a connection. But just as they approached the final phases of development, disaster struck. One afternoon, as she reviewed the latest feedback, her heart sank. A significant issue had emerged through user testing, one that could potentially jeopardize their entire launch. One of the developers exclaimed, bursting into her office. "We've got a major bug in the app that's causing crashes during user interaction." Panic surged through her. She asked, feeling the weight of her responsibility crushing down. The developer shrugged, eyes wide. "We didn't catch it during testing." Her mind raced. They were on the cusp of greatness, and now it felt like they were teetering on the edge of a cliff. She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to, but we need everyone on board working around the clock," he urged. With determination flowing through her, Sarah called an emergency meeting. The team gathered, faces etched with concern. "We're facing a challenge, but I believe we can turn this around. We need all hands on deck for the next few days," she declared, resolve burning in her eyes. "We can't let this define us, we adapt." Nods of agreement rippled through the room. They could do this. They had come too far to let one setback derail their efforts. The following days were a whirlwind of coding, testing, and late-night brainstorming. The atmosphere shifted from one of fear to camaraderie as they rallied together, united by a common purpose. They poured their hearts into the fixes, fueled by the passion that had originally ignited this project. As the clock wound down to the final moments, they finally solved the issue. Relief surged through Sarah as she watched the latest testing results come through. The app was stable, responsive, and ready for launch, but just as she was about to relax, another notification pinged. This one, however, was from a message thread that sent her heart plummeting. With trembling fingers, she opened the email. "Sarah, we need to discuss a pressing issue regarding the launch. It's critical." The weight of impending dread weighed heavily on her. What could this possibly mean? Had they discovered new issues? Did they regret putting her in charge? Each question felt like a knife, slicing through the calm she had fought so hard to establish. As she walked down the hallway to Thomas's office, every step felt like a countdown towards something monumental. The world around her blurred, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. What lay behind that door? Would this be the moment everything collapsed, or would it be the confirmation of her strength? When she finally reached his office, she hesitated for just a moment, heart pounding. Gathering her breath, she knocked firmly. "Come in," Thomas's voice echoed. As she stepped inside, the gravity in the room was palpable. Thomas looked serious, his brow furrowed, and the weight of unspoken words hung in the air. "Sarah, we need to talk about the launch date," he began, and just like that, everything she had worked for teetered on the brink of uncertainty. In that moment, Sarah held her breath, ready to face whatever was coming her way, a storm brewing in the distance with no way to know how it would unfold. The turning point was upon her, a moment that could change the course of everything she had fought so hard to build.